The first time the black cars pulled up, the entire street seemed to hold its breath. Engines purred like restrained beasts, doors opened in perfect unison, and men in tailored suits stepped out with the kind of precision that didn't belong on a quiet, worn-down corner where hope usually passed by without stopping. And standing right there, frozen with a paper coffee cup still in his hand, was Armin Halim, a single father who had spent the last year barely holding his world together. Before we go any further, if you believe that even the smallest acts of kindness can change someone's life forever, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Kindness Verse. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, and you never know who might need to hear them today. Every morning, just after sunrise, Armin followed the same routine. He would wake before his 6-year-old daughter, Meher, prepare her breakfast, pack her school bag, and gently brush her hair while she was still half asleep. Life had not been kind to him. Losing his wife 2 years ago had hollowed him out in ways he never thought possible, and the weight of raising Meher alone often felt heavier than anything he had ever carried. Yet he showed up, every single day, even when his heart begged him not to. After dropping Meher at school, Armin would stop by a small, nearly forgotten cafe at the edge of the market. It wasn't much, just a narrow space with chipped paint and mismatched chairs, but it had become part of his quiet survival. He would order 2 cups of coffee. One for himself, and one for the woman who sat outside on the broken pavement, wrapped in a faded shawl no matter the weather. Her name was Zareen. No one knew much about her. She rarely spoke, rarely looked anyone in the eye, and always seemed lost somewhere far beyond the noise of the city. Some said she had once been wealthy, others whispered she had lost her family in some terrible tragedy. But Armin never asked. He simply handed her the cup every morning, nodded gently, and sat beside her in silence for a few minutes before leaving for his job at a small mechanic shop. At first, she didn't react. Days passed, then weeks, and still, she barely acknowledged him. But Armin kept coming back. Not because he expected gratitude, but because something in her quiet presence reminded him of his own grief, the kind that words could never touch. One morning, as the winter chill began to settle in, Zareen finally looked at him. Just for a second. Her eyes, though tired and distant, held a flicker of something human, something alive. That single glance was enough to keep Armin going for weeks. Life outside those few moments was anything but easy. Money was always tight. The mechanic shop barely paid enough to cover rent, food, and Meher's school fees. Some nights, Armin would skip dinner so Meher could have a little more. Some days, he would work extra hours, his hands raw and aching, just to keep things afloat. And yet, no matter how hard things got, he never stopped buying that second cup of coffee. It became a quiet ritual. A small act of kindness in a world that had taken so much from both of them. Then, one ordinary morning, everything changed. Armin had just handed Zareen her coffee when the sound of engines cut through the usual hum of the street. He turned, confused, as 3 sleek black vehicles rolled to a stop nearby. People began to gather, whispering and pointing. It was the kind of scene that didn't belong there. Men in sharp suits stepped out first, scanning the surroundings with trained eyes. Then came the bodyguards, broad-shouldered, serious, and unmistakably alert. Armin instinctively stepped back, his heart pounding as he wondered if something terrible was about to happen. And then, from the center car, an older man emerged. He carried himself with quiet authority, his expression calm but intense. His eyes swept the area until they landed on Zareen. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The man walked slowly toward her. Armin watched, his breath caught somewhere between fear and confusion. Zareen, who had barely reacted to anything for months, suddenly straightened. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked up at him. And then something unimaginable happened. Tears filled her eyes. The man knelt beside her, his composure breaking as he reached out, his voice shaking with emotion. Though Armin couldn't hear the words clearly, the weight of them was undeniable. This was not a confrontation. This was reunion. This was loss meeting something it had long believed was gone forever. Within minutes, the truth began to unfold in fragments. Zareen was not just a forgotten woman on the street. She was the missing heir to a vast business empire, someone who had disappeared years ago after a devastating incident that shattered her memory and left her wandering, broken and alone. The man before her was her father. They had been searching for her all this time. The suits, the cars, the bodyguards, it all made sense now. But what didn't make sense, at least to Armin, was why fate had chosen him to be part of this story. As the scene unfolded, one of the men approached Armin. His tone was respectful, almost grateful. He explained that Zareen had been identified through a series of investigations, but what truly led them to her was something unexpected. A pattern. A man who showed up every morning. A man who gave without asking. A man who stayed, even when no one else did. Armin. In the days that followed, everything changed for Zareen. She was taken to receive medical care, her past slowly pieced back together, her life restored in ways that seemed almost impossible. But even as she re-entered a world of wealth and comfort, something remained rooted in her heart. She remembered the coffee. She remembered the quiet presence beside her. She remembered Armin. Weeks later, when the black cars returned, they came not with urgency, but with purpose. This time, they stopped outside Armin's modest home. He stood there, confused and overwhelmed, as Zareen stepped out. She looked different, stronger, more alive, but her eyes held the same quiet depth he had come to recognize. What followed was not a grand gesture, not a dramatic reward, but something far more meaningful. She offered him an opportunity. A chance to rebuild his life. A stable job within her family's company. Support for Meher's education. A way out of the constant struggle that had defined his days. But more than that, she offered him something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Armin hesitated at first. Not out of doubt, but out of disbelief. It felt unreal, like a story that belonged to someone else. But when he looked at Meher, standing beside him with wide, hopeful eyes, he knew this was a chance he couldn't turn away from. And so, slowly, life began to change. Not overnight. Not magically. But steadily. The struggles didn't vanish completely, but they softened. The weight became easier to carry. And for the first time in a long time, Armin allowed himself to believe that things could be different. That kindness, even the smallest kind, had power. If this story touched your heart in any way, take a moment to like, share, and comment. You never know who might need a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. And before we end, here's a special request. Comment, kindness matters, if you believe that even the smallest gesture can change a life.